The smoke should not have been there. At 5:32 on a February morning, Harlan Cross stopped his horse on the rim of Brimstone Ravine and stared down into a canyon that had been empty for 19 winters. Below him, a thread of gray smoke curled out of a broken firewatch cabin. No road, no power, no legal occupant. No reason for a stove to be burning before dawn. Harlan owned every acre from the North Ridge to the Black Spruce Flats. Men in 3 counties knew better than to step onto Crossland without permission. But when he rode down through the ice and reached the cabin door, it opened before he could knock. A woman stood there in patched work pants, one hand wrapped around an old shotgun, her hair wet with melted snow, her feet bare on the frozen boards. She did not tremble. She did not ask for mercy. She only raised the shotgun until the barrel pointed at the richest rancher in the Granite Range and said, "This roof is the only thing between me and the mountain. You can drag me out of it, or you can shoot me where I stand. But I am not walking back into that storm for any man." Harlan Cross had bought judges, buried competitors, broken droughts, and built an empire out of stone, cattle, and silence. But in that doorway, he understood something he had not felt in years. He had just met someone who could not be purchased, frightened, or moved. And that made her dangerous. The temperature had dropped to 20 below the night before Harlan found the smoke. He had left the main house before his daughter was awake, the way he always did. He kissed Millie's forehead, checked the stove in the nursery hall, and walked out into a darkness so cold it seemed to have weight. The ranch hands called him hard. The bankers called him disciplined. The newspapers called him the cattle king of the Granite Range. Harlan called it survival. Ranch alive after his wife died. Control had kept creditors away when blizzards killed 2,000 head in one season. Control had raised his daughter, paid his men, and made every person in Stone Mesa understand that Crossland was not common ground. So when he saw smoke rising from Brimstone Ravine, he did not send a hand to investigate. He went himself. The trail down was a scar of frozen mud and knife-edged shale. His horse, a black gelding named Rook, picked through it carefully while Harlan watched the canyon below. The old firewatch cabin had been built during the timber wars and abandoned after the tower burned. Harlan had not ridden to it in 5 years. There was nothing down there worth stealing, nothing worth hiding, and no sane person would choose it in winter. Yet someone had repaired the roof with split planks and hammered tin. Someone had stacked deadfall under a canvas scrap. Someone had cut a drainage trench around the porch with a shovel and bare persistence. The woman who opened the door looked about 35, though exhaustion made age hard to read. She had gray eyes, a cut across one cheek, and the stillness of an animal that had already decided which way it would run if cornered. "That's far enough," she said. Harlan stopped 6 feet from the porch. "You're trespassing." "I know. This is my ravine." "Then you own a miserable place." His mouth almost twitched. Almost. "What's your name?" She waited so long he thought she would refuse. "Rowan." "Rowan what?" "Rowan is enough for a man holding a rifle beside his horse." Harlan glanced at the shotgun. "That thing loaded?" "Yes." "You know how to use it?" Her finger tightened slightly against the guard. "Better than I know how to ask permission." The wind moved over the ridge and dropped loose snow from the pines. Harlan studied the cabin behind her. A cot made from saplings, a stove patched with iron straps, canned beans in a crate. 3 books stacked near a lantern, a map pinned to the wall with bone needles. This was not a drunk's shelter. It was not a thief's camp. It was a last stand. "You have until sundown to leave," he said. No. The word landed cleanly between them. Harlan was used to bargaining. People begged, threatened, lied, flattered, folded. This woman did none of it. "No," he repeated. "I walked 30 miles through snow to reach a place no one wanted. I fixed your rotten cabin. I cut your dead wood. I have not stolen from your house or frightened your animals. The mountain is trying hard enough to kill me without your help. You expect me to let a stranger live on my land because she gives a good speech? I expect nothing from you." That answer did more to stop him than pleading would have. Harlan removed one glove slowly, held his empty hand where she could see it, and stepped onto the first porch board. The shotgun rose. "I said far enough, and I heard you," he said. "But it is 20 below. My coffee is frozen in my saddlebag, and if we are going to decide whether you spend the day alive or arrested, I prefer doing it near a stove." Rowan looked at him for a long time. Then she lowered the gun by 1 inch. "1 step," she said. Inside, the cabin smelled of pine smoke, metal, wet wool, and hunger. Harlan took in every detail without seeming to. The roof patches were ugly but watertight. The stone around the stove had been reset by someone who understood heat. The food stores were thin but rationed. The map on the wall showed springs, game trails, and old survey cuts across the backcountry of his ranch. "You've been mapping my land," he said. "I've been figuring out where not to die. With my springs. With water that came out of the ground before your name was on paper." Most people would have apologized after saying that. Rowan did not. Harlan sat at the table because she did not invite him to. "Have you been here?" 7 weeks. "Where did you come from?" "South." Not an answer. "It is the only one that keeps me breathing." There it was again. Not drama, not performance. A closed door with blood behind it. Harlan should have ordered her out. He had done worse for less. A ranch his size could not run on sentiment. 1 exception became 10, and 10 became a reputation for weakness. But the map held his eye. His north range had not been properly surveyed in years. Springs shifted, fences snapped under ice. Poachers cut through gulches where the hired men refused to ride in winter. Rowan had marked 3 water pockets Harlan's own foreman had never told him about. "You draw well," he said. "I measure better. Can you ride?" "I can stay on." "Can you read boundary lines?" "I was a school teacher before I learned how quickly paper can be made worthless." That was the first crack in her. Harlan saw it. Rowan saw him see it. Her expression locked shut again. He stood. "I need the high ravines surveyed before thaw. Springs, fence breaks, illegal camps, timber damage. My men won't do it in this weather." Smart men. Soft men. He pulled the folded contract sheet from his coat pocket and laid it on the table, blank side up. Work for me until April. I bring supplies, a horse, wages, and legal permission to live here. Pocket, and laid it on the table, blank side up. Work for me until April. I bring supplies, a horse, wages, and legal permission to live here. When thaw comes, you leave or renegotiate. Your choice. She stared at him as if kindness were a trick with teeth. What do you want? I just told you. No. What do you want from me? Harlan did not answer quickly. The honest answer was inconvenient. He wanted competence. He wanted the truth behind her eyes. He wanted to know why a woman who could rebuild a cabin in winter was more afraid of the road behind her than the storm in front of her. Instead, he said, "A map." Rowan's laugh was dry and small. Men like you never want only a map. Men like me want value. You appear to have some. She hated him for the wording. He knew that. He used it anyway because distance was easier than warmth. "Put it in writing," she said. "I will. No locked terms, no debt, no favors, no claim over where I go when the snow melts." Agreed. "And if you touch me without permission, I will not warn you twice." Harlan picked up his glove. That seems fair. For the first time, Rowan looked almost confused. He rode back to the main house with the smoke still in his coat. By the next morning, the ranch had heard enough to invent the rest. Orrin Pike, Harlan's foreman, found him in the saddle room and said, "Tell me you did not hire a half-frozen stranger with a shotgun." "I did. To survey the North Range." "Yes." "In February." "Yes." Orrin stared at him, as if waiting for the punchline. None came. "You know nothing about her." "I know she survived 7 weeks in Brimstone with no help and made better maps than men I pay twice as much. She could be running from the law. Most people are running from something." Orrin's face hardened. He had been with Harlan through drought, debt, and burial. He was one of the few men who could speak plainly and keep his job. You do not collect broken people because they remind you of yourself. Harlan looked up from the tack. "Careful." "I am being careful. That is why I said it." Harlan dismissed him with silence, which had worked on almost everyone for 20 years. It did not work on Rowan. She began sending maps every 5 days, not rough notes. Work. She marked frost-heaved posts, hidden springs, wolf dens, old traps, washed-out culverts, illegal timber cuts, and a collapsed mine shaft near the eastern cliffs that could have killed a dozen cattle come spring. Harlan spread the first 3 maps across his desk and felt the peculiar irritation of being impressed. His daughter Millie climbed into the chair opposite him, still in her night braid, and studied the papers. "Is that the woman from the canyon?" "Yes." "Does she have a name?" "Rowan." "Is she poor?" Harlan paused. "At the moment." Millie frowned. "That is not the same as being nothing." "No," Harlan said. "It is not." The first time Rowan came to Stone Mesa, she arrived because Harlan forced the matter. There was a winter stockman's supper at the church hall. Harlan attended every year because people needed to see him appear human for one evening. He told Rowan she had to attend, so the county would know she worked for him and was not prey for gossip, deputies, or worse. She arrived late in a dark wool dress that looked borrowed, her hair pinned severely, her eyes already measuring exits. Every head turned. A stranger woman under Harlan Cross's protection was worth more gossip than a barn fire. Mrs. Calder, the town's self-appointed judge of everyone's character, reached Rowan before Harlan could. "My dear, where exactly did you come from?" Rowan looked at her. "The road." "How mysterious. How ordinary." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut meat. Dr. Bell, the only man in town who found gossip more exhausting than illness, rescued them by offering Rowan coffee. Millie appeared next, unafraid and curious. "Were you really a teacher?" Rowan blinked, caught off guard. "Yes." "What did you teach?" "Children who asked direct questions." Millie smiled. "Then you would like me." Rowan tried not to smile back, and failed by a fraction. Harlan saw it. Something in him tightened. Later he found Rowan behind the church hall, standing where lamplight thinned into blue snow. "He vanished," he said. "I improved the room by leaving it." They were staring because they do not know you. They were staring because they wanted to decide what kind of woman ends up in an abandoned cabin with a gun. "And what kind is that?" Her answer came after a long breath. "The kind who signed away her home because the alternative was starving in the courthouse hall." Harlan became very still. Rowan looked toward the dark road. "His name is Elias Venn, land broker, loan man, friend of sheriffs, owner of people who claim they cannot be owned." Harlan knew the name. Everyone did. Then bought distressed land and turned sorrow into acreage. Widows, failed homesteads, probate tangles, people with no money left to defend what was theirs. What did he take? Mercy Creek, 48 acres, a schoolhouse I ran from my kitchen, a barn my husband built before fever took him. Then arrived 2 months after the burial with a loan note I had never seen. He said my husband had borrowed against the land. He had a notary seal, bank records, and a deadline. Was the note real? No. Can you prove that? If I could prove it, I would not be living in your ravine. The words hit harder than she intended. Harlan felt his jaw set. What bank? Granite Mutual in Larkspur. What lawyer? The one who told me grief made women poor witnesses. Harlan looked at the town lights, at the people inside pretending the world was decent because they had not been forced to test it that day. "Write everything down," he said. "No." He turned. Rowan's eyes flashed. "I told you because you asked, not because I need another man deciding my life is a problem to solve. It is a crime. It is over. Not if the paper was forged. It is over for women without money." Harlan stepped closer, anger held in a voice too quiet for comfort. "Then it is useful that I have money." Rowan stared at him. "That is not justice." "No," he said, "but it may be the tool we have." He expected gratitude. He should have known better. She looked at him like he had just reached for a wound without washing his hands. "Do not make me your good deed, Mr. Cross." Then she walked back into the supper hall, and left him in the cold with a sentence he could not shake. By sunrise, Harlan had Orrin digging through county records. By noon, he had 3 names. By the end of the week, he had 9. 9 women, 9 properties, 9 sudden loan notes appearing after husbands died, brothers disappeared, fathers lost memory, or families became too poor to fight. Each note backed by the same bank, each transfer closing at a price far below value, each document touched, somewhere, by Elias Venn. Harlan found one of the women above a laundry in Larkspur. Her name was Alma Keene, and she kept every letter in a tin bread box because pain had made her meticulous. "No one cared when it was my orchard," she said, handing him the papers. "Maybe they will care now that it is yours to be angry about. It is not mine." Alma looked at him over tired eyes. Power always thinks anything it notices becomes its property. Harlan carried that rebuke back to Stone Mesa as carefully as evidence. He confronted Venn 2 days later in a paneled office that smelled of cigar smoke and polished fraud. Elias Venn was thin, silver-haired, and mild in the way knives are mild before they cut. He smiled when Harlan entered. "Cross, I assume this is about business." "It is about theft." Harlan dropped the copied notes on the desk. Rowan's file, Alma's, 7 more. Venn glanced down, then back up. Not frightened, not yet. Unhappy sellers often invent ugly stories. Dead men do not sign loans. Widows often know less about their husbands than they believe. Harlan leaned over the desk. "You will return Mercy Creek to Rowan Nash. You will compensate her for 3 years, and you will leave every other file open for review." Then's smile became smaller. "And if I decline?" "I put your name in every paper from here to Denver. I have investigators, attorneys, judges who owe me favors, and enough money to make your grandchildren spell fraud in court." For a moment, Venn's eyes changed. There was fear there. Then calculation. 24 hours, Harlan said. Use them wisely. Then used 12. The deed arrived at Harlan's lawyer before breakfast, along with a compensation draft and a statement claiming the transfer had been a clerical correction. Rowan held the deed on the porch of the Firewatch cabin and cried without sound. Harlan stood below the steps with his hat in his hands, helpless in a way no lawsuit had ever made him. "It is real," he said. "That is what frightens me. Getting it back? Believing it can stay." The first victory lasted 26 days. On the 27th, Elias Venn filed suit. Coercion, defamation, extortion, business damages, a public apology, $3 million, reversal of the deed. The newspapers loved it. The town devoured it. Harlan Cross, the iron rancher, accused of bullying an honest broker over a woman found living on his land. Men who had feared Harlan for years suddenly discovered principles. Women who had whispered Rowan's name now said it louder. Millie heard it at school. She came home silent. At dinner she asked, "Is Miss Rowan bad?" Harlan set down his fork. "No." "Then why did Mrs. Calder say she bewitched you?" The table went still. Orrin looked at his plate. Mrs. Liao, the housekeeper, closed her eyes. Harlan felt old violence rise in him, the kind money had taught him to hide under contracts. Because some people call a woman dangerous when she survives without their permission. Millie thought about that. Then I think Mrs. Calder is stupid. She is many things, Harlan said. That may be one of them. Rowan came to the main house that night in a snow squall, furious before she crossed the threshold. You settle, she said. No. You settle and let the land go. No. He will ruin you. He can try. He will drag your daughter through this. He will make me into a scandal and you into a fool, and maybe he will win because paper lies better than people do. Harlan did not answer. That made her angrier. I survived Ven once by leaving. Do not make me survive him again by watching him destroy the first person who tried to help me. There was the wound. Not pride. Terror. Harlan stepped closer but did not touch her. You were right, he said. I tried to fix this with force because force is what I understand. That was careless. Rowan blinked. She had come prepared to fight. An apology was harder to strike. But I will not give him back what he stole. Then what do? We stop threatening. We prove. For 60 days, the ranch became a war room. Harlan's lawyer pulled land files. Orrin chased retired clerks. Rowan wrote every memory she had refused to write before. The date Ven arrived. The smell of rain on the courthouse steps. The ink color on the false note. The way the notary seal sat crooked. The way her husband formed the letter R with a double loop. That detail mattered to no one. Until it mattered to everything. The case still looked bad. The original loan note was missing. Granite Mutual claimed old records had been destroyed in a fire. The judge disliked Harlan's threats. Ven's attorney painted Rowan as unstable, Harlan as controlling, and the deed return as the product of intimidation. 3 weeks before trial, Harlan's lawyer advised settlement. If you lose, he said, you pay damages, apologize publicly, and Ven gets the land back. If the prosecutor gets ambitious, he could explore charges. Rowan was sitting across the room. She went pale. Harlan looked at her, then at the maps on his wall. All his life he had believed stone held because it refused to move. But stone could also crush what it meant to protect. Set the meeting, he said. Ven's settlement terms were designed to humiliate. Return Mercy Creek, pay $3 million, apologize in the Larkspur Gazette, admit the fraud allegations were false. Harlan read the document once. No. His lawyer nearly cursed. Ven's attorney smiled. Then court will be unpleasant. Harlan looked at Ven, not the attorney. You're pushing too hard. Ven's face twitched. Less than a blink. But Harlan had built an empire by noticing when men overplayed a winning hand. You are not trying to settle, Harlan said. You are trying to make me stop looking. No one spoke. So Harlan made the only gamble left. 60 more days of discovery, he said. If I find nothing, I sign your terms. Every one. His lawyer whispered, Harlan. Then studied him. A man with nothing to hide would have refused. Then agreed. The first break came from smoke. Not the smoke in Brimstone Ravine. Older smoke. A county records fire in Larkspur 3 years earlier had supposedly destroyed the original loan files tied to 4 disputed properties. Harlan found the retired fire inspector living behind a feed store, still angry enough to keep copies. 3 ignition points, Inspector Mateo Ruiz said, sliding photographs across a kitchen table. Accelerant near the east wall. Records room burned hottest. They called it faulty wiring because no one wanted a fight. Can you connect it to Ven? No, but I can prove the fire was set. The second break came from a man Oren found hauling gravel outside Larkspur. He had been paid in cash to move boxes out of a storage unit the night before the records office burned. Then supervised the load himself. Midnight. No receipt. A threat disguised as a confidentiality agreement. The third break came from a bank officer named Patricia Wynn, who refused to break the law but disliked Elias Venn more than she feared him. "I cannot tell you what is in any customer's box," she said in a cafe with her hands wrapped around untouched tea. "But if a court order mentioned box 312 at Granite Mutual, the bank would have to comply." 2 weeks later, the judge signed the order. The vault room at Granite Mutual was small, windowless, and too bright. Rowan stood beside Harlan without touching him. Her face looked carved from ash. A bank manager inserted 1 key. The court officer inserted another. The box slid free with a sound like a drawer opening in a grave. Inside were folders. Not 1, dozens. Loan notes, deeds, side agreements, original signatures, copies of copies, a private archive of stolen lives. Rowan found the folder marked Nash, Mercy Creek. Her hands shook so badly Harlan reached toward her, then stopped. She opened it herself. The loan note bore her dead husband's name. For a moment she only stared. Then she whispered, "The R." Harlan saw it. 1 loop. Every real letter from her husband had 2. A handwriting expert confirmed the forgery in 48 hours. Then another. Then the prosecutors found the same traced signatures in 6 more folders. Elias Venn was arrested before trial. Fraud, forgery, arson conspiracy, witness intimidation. His attorney withdrew the lawsuit. Granite Mutual denied knowledge until the second indictment. The newspapers that had mocked Rowan printed her name beside words like victim and survivor, as if ink could wash away what ink had helped steal. Harlan did not celebrate when Venn was taken from the courthouse in handcuffs. Rowan did not smile either. She watched from the steps, Mercy Creek's deed folded in her coat pocket, and said, "It should not have taken your money to make the truth visible." "No," Harlan said, "it should not have. That was the part that changed him. Not winning." Understanding the size of what money had hidden, Harlan forced the bank into a compensation fund. He forced Venn's shell companies into liquidation. He threatened the mining outfit that had stripped Mercy Creek until they agreed to restore the creek bed, replant the orchard slope, and rebuild the schoolhouse kitchen Venn had torn down for lumber. This time, Rowan signed every document herself, not as a rescued woman, as the owner. Spring came late to the Granite Range. Snow withdrew from the ravines in dirty sheets. Water returned to the ditches. The cabin at Brimstone started to smell less like survival and more like memory. and rode to the main house one evening and found Harlan mending a gate with Millie handing him nails from a tin cup. "I went to Mercy Creek," Rowan said. Harlan stood too quickly. "And?" "The water is clear." Millie smiled. "Does that mean you are going back?" The question was innocent. It still split the evening open. Rowan looked toward the mountains, then the house, then the child who had stopped pretending not to hope. "I am not moving back," she said. Harlan's hand tightened on the fence rail. Rowan saw it. "Mercy Creek was where my old life ended. I needed it returned, because stolen things should be returned. But a deed is not the same as a home." "What will you do with it?" he asked. "Keep the land, lease the pasture, reopen the little schoolhouse for children too far from town, and stay here if the offer still stands." Millie dropped the nail cup and ran at her. Rowan caught her like she had been expecting the weight. Harlan looked away because some moments deserved privacy, even when they happened in front of him. Later, when Millie had been sent inside and the light had gone blue, Rowan stood with Harlan by the unfinished fence. "I do not know how to trust help," she said. "I do not know how to give it without taking over." "That will be a problem." "Yes." "We will fight." "Probably." "You will try to fix things I did not ask you to fix." "Almost certainly." "And I will run at least 3 steps before I remember I do not have to." Harlan nodded. "Then I will wait at the 4th. Rowan looked at him then, really looked, and the last of the day caught in her eyes. The house they built for her was not in the ravine. It stood on the high meadow where she could see Mercy Creek to the south, Brimstone to the north, and the Cross Ranch spread below like proof that land could be both responsibility and refuge. She became head of range management before the first frost. The man who muttered about taking orders from a woman stopped muttering after she found 2 hidden springs, redesigned the winter grazing route, and cut cattle loss by a 1/3. Millie started leaving school books at Rowan's house and pretending it was an accident. Orrin stopped warning Harlan about broken people and started bringing Rowan broken fence reports because she fixed them faster. And Harlan learned, slowly and badly, that walls could keep out grief, but also keep out light. Years later, people would ask how it began, and Harlan learned, slowly and badly, that walls could keep out grief, but also keep out light. Years later, people would ask how it began. Rowan would say, "He found me trespassing." Harlan would say, "She aimed a shotgun at my chest." Millie would add, "And neither of them was smart enough to run." They would laugh because enough time had passed for terror to become story. But Harlan never forgot the truth of it. The smoke in Brimstone Ravine had not been a warning. It had been a signal. Not that someone had invaded his land, not that something was wrong. It was the first sign that beneath all that cold, all that silence, all that ruin, somebody was still burning. And sometimes, that is where life begins again.